You are listening to A Matter of Time. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be going deeper into Florida's life without parole sentences.
Okay.
It's something that we've touched on before.
Right.
But this time, we're really digging into potential solutions and, surprisingly, the financial side of things as well.
Yeah.
And we've got some excerpts from the book Life Ain't Fair, some internal research notes, and even some follow-up thoughts from our last conversation on this to unpack.
That's right. It really is fascinating how the financial and ethical pieces of this are really intertwined.
Yeah.
You know, we're really going to be looking at how exploring potential solutions for LWOP sentences could not only create a fairer system,
Right.
but also uncover this like hidden resource for Florida.
Okay, so let's start with what Florida's already doing.
Okay.
So they've got these conviction review units, or CRUs,
Right.
that investigate potential wrongful convictions.
Right.
But from what I'm reading, it seems like they're mainly focused on like proving someone's innocence, not necessarily on whether a lengthy sentence is still appropriate, years later.
That's exactly right. And it raises kind of a crucial question.
Yeah.
What about the individuals who may not be innocent,
Right.
but has served decades
Yeah.
and shown just genuine rehabilitation?
Yeah.
And that's where this idea of second chance integrity units, or SCI units, comes in.
So SCI units, how would they actually work?
Well,
I mean, I'm curious how they would fit into the existing system.
yeah, so the book proposes housing them within state attorney offices,
Okay.
specifically tasked with reviewing cases where individuals have served at least 20 years
Okay.
and have a solid track record of rehabilitation.
20 years is a long time.
Right.
How would they even begin to identify the candidates that might deserve a second look?
Yeah, that's where these second chance forms come into play.
Okay.
Think of them as kind of like specialized units within prisons, kind of like the program we talked about before, Dr. Regina B. Shern's Corrections Transition Lifers program.
Yep.
These dorms would help identify and prepare individuals for potential review
Okay.
by the SCI units.
So you're putting these individuals in a supportive environment to really demonstrate their rehabilitation.
Right.
But then who actually reviews their cases?
So this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The book suggests bringing in law students
Okay.
to help build comprehensive profiles
Okay.
for each candidate.
Wow.
We're talking about their progress in rehabilitative programs to their education, work history within the prison character statements from guards and chaplains,
Wow.
potentially even victims or their families.
So these profiles would be pretty in-depth.
Yes.
But wouldn't that create a huge workload
Yeah.
for the SCI units, especially if they're dealing with, decades-long cases? How would they decide which cases to prioritize?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And to ensure objectivity,
Okay.
the book emphasizes the importance of risk assessment tools,
Okay.
which Florida already uses in other parts of its justice system.
Right.
These tools provide data-driven insights into an individual's likelihood of reoffending.
So it's not just about good behavior in prison.
Right.
You're adding like a layer of objective analysis.
Exactly. And there are different types of risk factors these tools look at.
Okay.
So you've got your static factors like age at first offense
Okay.
or criminal history.
Right.
These give you a sense of long-term risk.
Yeah.
But then there are dynamic factors,
Okay.
things that can change over time, like their behavior in prison,
Okay.
program completion,
Right.
and even their plans for the future.
That makes sense. So you're looking at both like the unchanging aspects of their past
Right.
and the evidence of how they've grown and changed while incarcerated.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering, with these risk assessment tools, wouldn't the focus still be on like the potential danger that someone poses?
Right.
What about their potential to contribute positively to society if given a second chance?
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. And it's something the book really emphasizes as well.
Okay.
You have to remember that a lot of people serving LWOP in Florida are first-time or emerging adult offenders. And studies show that these groups have a lower risk of recidivism,
Okay.
especially with the right support.
Right.
So instead of fixating on risk,
Yeah.
we should also be considering the potential contributions these individuals could make.
It sounds like a real shift in perspective is needed here.
Absolutely.
We're so used to thinking about punishment
Right.
that the idea of focusing on potential feels almost radical.
I know it's true.
But isn't that what rehabilitation is all about?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that people can change
Yeah.
and that investing in their rehabilitation benefits everyone.
Yeah.
And there's a very compelling financial argument to be made here as well.
Okay.
The book highlights the significant cost difference between keeping someone incarcerated, which is about $27,000 a year.
Per inmate,
and community supervision, which is closer to $3,000.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is.
And when you consider that Florida has around 14,000 LWOP inmates, even a small percentage being released under supervision could mean substantial savings.
Exactly. Let's imagine, conservatively, that just 1/3 of Florida's LWOP population was deemed suitable for release under supervision.
Okay.
That's a potential annual saving of over $126 million.
Wow.
And keep in mind, this is a very conservative estimate.
Yeah.
It doesn't even factor in the fact that half of Florida's LWOP population is over 50.
Right.
Meaning they cost even more to incarcerate.
Right, because of healthcare and all that.
Because of healthcare needs, exactly.
Okay. So we're talking about potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in savings.
Potential.
But I imagine some people would argue that releasing even a small percentage of LWOP inmates is just too risky.
Sure.
How would you address that concern?
Well, it's important to remember that these individuals would be carefully selected based on their rehabilitation progress, risk assessment, and the specific circumstances of their cases.
Right.
And even with a 1/3 reduction in its LWOP population, Florida would still have more people serving life without parole sentences than any other jurisdiction in the world.
That puts things in perspective.
It does.
So it's not about being lenient, it's about being smart and recognizing that the current system is not only costly, but also maybe unnecessarily harsh in a lot of cases.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about releasing people back into society without support.
Right.
The book proposes the creation of second chance communities, or SCCs.
Okay.
These are essentially halfway house transition centers.
Okay.
Specifically designed for individuals who have served LWOP sentences.
So these SCCs would provide a structured environment to help individuals transition back into society after, years, maybe even decades behind bars.
Right.
I'm curious, what would that structure look like? Like, what are we talking about here?
Think of SCCs as kind of a bridge between prison life and reintegration back into society.
Okay.
They would offer supervised housing, ankle monitoring to ensure accountability, and mandatory programs tailored to the specific needs of this population.
Mandatory programs. So we're talking about more than just a place to live.
Right.
What kind of programs are we talking about?
It's about equipping these individuals with the tools they need to succeed.
Okay.
We're talking vocational training, counseling, substance abuse support if needed, job placement assistance, and life skills development.
Okay.
The goal is to address those challenges they'll face head on and set them up for long-term success.
It sounds like these SCCs would be a pretty significant investment.
Yeah.
How would they be funded?
That's actually one of the really interesting aspects of this proposal.
Okay.
While there would be some upfront costs involved.
Right.
Remember those potential savings we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
From reducing the LWOP population.
Yeah.
The book suggests that a portion of those savings could be redirected to fund these SCCs.
So you're essentially reinvesting the money saved from incarceration into these reintegration programs.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, but wouldn't it be a burden on taxpayers to fund all these programs and support services?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The SCCs would operate with a focus on financial sustainability.
Okay.
Residents would pay a reduced rate for room and board.
Okay.
Contributing to the operational costs.
Okay.
And remember, many of these individuals would be entering the workforce.
Right.
Paying taxes, contributing to the economy.
So instead of costing the state money, they would actually be generating revenue.
Right.
And their contributions wouldn't be limited to just financial gains, right?
No, not at all.
I remember the book also talked about the potential social impact of these second chance initiatives.
Absolutely. That's one of the most exciting aspects of this whole concept. Just imagine the ripple effect of these individuals reintegrating into society and becoming positive forces in their communities.
It is inspiring to think about the potential.
It is.
But I'm also thinking about the victims of these crimes.
Right.
How would their needs and concerns be addressed?
That's a very important point, and the book doesn't shy away from that.
Okay.
It actually highlights the importance of incorporating victim impact and accountability programs into these second chance initiatives. These programs could provide opportunities for mediated communication between offenders and victims. If both parties are willing.
So it's not about dismissing the harm that's been done.
Right.
It's about acknowledging it while also recognizing the potential for healing and growth for everyone involved.
Exactly.
But some people might still argue that offering these kinds of opportunities to individuals who've committed serious crimes is letting them off easy.
Right.
How would you respond to that?
Well, it's not about letting anyone off easy. It's about recognizing that people are capable of change. Remember those risk assessment tools we talked about?
Yeah.
Those would play a crucial role in identifying individuals who have genuinely demonstrated rehabilitation and are unlikely to reoffend. And keep in mind, the path to reintegration wouldn't be a cakewalk.
Right.
These individuals would have to earn their way back into society through hard work, accountability, and a commitment to making amends.
So it's about earning a second chance, not just being given one.
Right.
But even with all these safeguards in place, I imagine it would still be a difficult journey.
Oh, absolutely.
What kind of support would these individuals need to truly succeed?
Well, beyond the structured environment of the SCCs, access to mental health and substance abuse services would be crucial. Many of these individuals have experienced trauma.
Right.
And may be dealing with the long-term effects of incarceration.
It makes sense that those kinds of support services would be essential. But how would they find jobs and housing after being away for so long?
That's where the vocational training and job placement assistance we talked about earlier would come in.
Right.
The SCCs would work with businesses and organizations to create employment opportunities for these individuals, helping them build new skills and gain valuable work experience.
Right.
And as they transition out of the SCCs, they would need ongoing support in finding stable housing and navigating the challenges of reentry.
It sounds like a comprehensive approach is needed to really make this work.
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering, isn't all of this just a pipe dream?
Well,
is it even realistic to think that Florida would embrace such a radical shift in its approach to criminal justice?
It might seem like a radical shift.
Yeah.
But remember, we're already seeing some movement in this direction. Florida has been experimenting with various reentry programs, and there's a growing recognition of the need for reform.
So there's hope that this isn't just wishful thinking, that real change is possible.
I think so.
But what would it take to get from these ideas to actual policy changes?
Well, it would require a collective effort. From lawmakers, advocates, and the public. There needs to be a shift in the narrative around criminal justice. Moving away from a purely punitive approach to one that recognizes the potential for rehabilitation and the value of second chances.
And that shift in narrative would need to be backed up by data, right? The book makes a strong case for the financial benefits of these reforms. But what about the evidence for their effectiveness in reducing recidivism and improving public safety?
That's where research and data come into play. We need rigorous evaluations of existing reentry programs to demonstrate their effectiveness and to identify best practices. And we need to invest in research that explores the factors that contribute to successful reintegration and the long-term impacts of these initiatives.
So it's about building a solid foundation of evidence to support these reforms and to address the concerns of those who might be skeptical.
Exactly.
But even with all the data in the world, change can be slow.
It can.
Especially when it comes to something as deeply entrenched as our criminal justice system. What gives you hope that this kind of transformation is possible?
What gives me hope is the human capacity for change. And the growing recognition that our current system is not working. We're seeing more and more people from all walks of life speaking out against mass incarceration and calling for a more humane and effective approach to justice.
That's encouraging.
It is.
It seems like there's a growing movement for change.
I think so.
And this book is adding fuel to that fire.
Right.
But it's not just about statistics and policy proposals, is it?
No.
At the heart of this issue are real people. Individuals whose lives are deeply impacted by these policies.
Absolutely. And that's something the book does so well. It weaves in these personal stories that really bring this issue to life. Remember the story about the inmate who found solace in nature during his prison visits?
Yes, I do.
It's a powerful reminder of the human cost of these policies.
Yeah.
And the need for hope and connection, even within a system designed for punishment.
That story really resonated with me too. It reminded me that even in the darkest of places, there's still a flicker of humanity, a longing for connection and meaning.
Absolutely.
And it made me think about the families of those serving LWOP sentences.
Right.
They're also serving a sentence of sorts.
They are.
A life filled with loss and separation.
That's so true. And their voices need to be part of this conversation as well.
Yeah.
Their stories can shed light on the ripple effects of these policies.
Right.
And the importance of creating a system that is more restorative and healing for everyone involved.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But what's clear is that the status quo is not sustainable.
Not at all.
We need to find a better way.
Yes.
A way that upholds justice while also recognizing the possibility of redemption and the value of second chances.
I agree.
Yeah, it feels like we're really starting to grasp the human side of this issue now, not just the legal or the financial aspect.
Exactly. And that human element is what often gets lost in all these debates around criminal justice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We need to remember that we're talking about real people.
Yeah.
With families and hopes and dreams, and not just case numbers or statistics.
Life Ain't Fair definitely doesn't let you forget that.
No, it doesn't.
It's woven throughout the entire book.
It is.
But it also doesn't shy away from addressing some of the tough realities. Like, there will always be individuals who pose a serious risk.
Right.
Even after years of incarceration. So how do we balance that with this idea of second chances?
It is a constant balancing act.
Yep.
And the book acknowledges that some form of incarceration will always be necessary for public safety.
Of course.
But it argues that we need to be more discerning in how we use this tool.
Okay.
Reserving life without parole for the truly exceptional cases where there's no realistic possibility of rehabilitation.
So it's not about throwing open the prison doors or anything. It's about being smarter, more strategic, and more humane in how we approach sentencing and reintegration.
Exactly.
But I know some people would say, hey, Florida's tough on crime for a reason. It keeps us safe.
Right.
How would you respond to that?
Well, first I'd ask them to look at the data.
Okay.
You know, Florida's prison system is bursting at the seams. Violence is on the rise.
Right.
Staff shortages are creating dangerous conditions for both inmates and corrections officers.
Right.
Tough on crime policies haven't necessarily made us safer.
It's like we're clinging to this system that's not only morally questionable, but also failing on like a practical level.
Right.
And Life Ain't Fair really lays out that argument.
Yeah.
Citing some pretty alarming statistics about the state of Florida's prisons.
Yeah, the book highlights these warnings from Mark Inch, the former Florida Department of Corrections Secretary, about the dire conditions and the unsustainable costs of housing an aging LWOP population.
Right.
It's a system teetering on the brink of collapse.
So we're talking about a moral imperative and a practical necessity for change here.
I think so.
But let's bring it back to our listener for a second.
Okay.
What can someone who's been listening to all this do?
Yeah.
How can they make a difference?
That's where the real power of this book and this deep dive comes in.
Okay.
Knowledge is the first step.
Okay.
Share what you've learned with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone who will listen.
Yeah.
Engage in conversations about criminal justice reform.
Right. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by these big issues.
It is.
But even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. Contact your elected officials. Let them know that you care about this issue.
Okay.
Support organizations that are working on criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
There are so many doing incredible work right here in Florida.
And I think the most important thing is to remember the human stories behind all of this.
Absolutely.
Like that inmate finding peace in nature during his visits.
Right.
You know, these aren't just abstract policy debates.
No.
They're about real people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If we can connect with that human element, it makes it much harder to ignore the need for change.
Right.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Imagine a Florida where second chances are not the exception, but the norm.
Wow.
Where we invest in rehabilitation and reintegration, not just punishment.
Yeah.
Where we recognize the potential in every human being, no matter their past mistake. That's the Florida I believe we can build.
Wow.
And it starts with each one of us.
Powerful stuff. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope it's left you with some new insights, maybe even some hope, and definitely a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
If you're interested in learning more about this issue, be sure to check out Life Ain't Fair.
Yes.
And keep the conversation going. The path to a more just and humane system starts with all of us.
You are listening to A Matter of Time, where we explore better justice options for the people of Florida. Please like, comment, and subscribe.